Hey guys, it's Ivix. Let's get into why people headcanon My Little Pony characters the way they do. First up, Twilight Sparkle, canonically the most important character to the My Little Pony universe. So it's pretty common in the My Little Pony fandom for fans to headcanon exactly what they think the characters would look like in real life based on their ethnicity or race. And the most popular for Twilight Sparkle is to be headcanon as either South Asian or specifically Indian. Fans argue that Twilight would be Indian because she is resilient, highly educated, ultimately a perfectionist, and she just wants the best for everyone. However, this belief comes from Indian tradition, where Indians value education and intellectual achievement. This is an Indian concept known as karma yoga. So what this means is a person must not expect value, such as rewards, for their good deeds. And we see this in Twilight Sparkle. She helps many ponies and other creatures without expecting rewards, even though she still gains wings and powers, but that's due to her selflessness ultimately. This is exactly why people see her as canonically South Asian/Indian. Pinkie Pie. Just to note, we're covering two of Pinkie Pie's most popular headcanons. Pinkie Pie, like many characters similar to her even in other universes, such as Ever After High Madeline Hatter, is able to see into the fourth dimension. This makes her culturally significant, not just in the fandom, but in general in pop culture around the world, from different people. Pinkie Pie is recognized in Lolita fashion, and therefore, people constantly debate about what she looks like. We're going to get into it. There are two categories, the big ones at least. Pinkie Pie is either black, or Pinkie Pie is either ginger with white skin. So, within the My Little Pony fandom, the black community believe Pinkie Pie is canonically black. This theory stems from the fact that Pinkie portrays big, bouncy curls. She loves to dance and party, a stereotype seen in black culture, and she loves to make food. Yes, these are stereotypes. This theory could also stem from the rise of jazz culture for black people during the early 1920s in American history. Moreover, in many African traditions, dance and partying and food has always been seen as a way to form community or family. Belief 2. Pinkie is white with ginger hair. Again, this comes from physical appearance, her big bouncy curls, but even her blue eyes. They believe the pink hair represents ginger hair, often seen in Irish/Scottish descent. Similar to African descent, in Scottish and Irish culture, dance, food, family, all of that unite really well together, making many see her as, canonically, ginger. Fluttershy. Fluttershy is seen as Dutch. This is probably due to her voice actress being of Dutch descent. Now, obviously, in terms of headcanons of ethnicity, Fluttershy is actually one of the least spoken about. So, people think she's Dutch, but it's not a really popular belief compared to Rarity, Twilight Sparkle, and, of course, Pinkie Pie. However, the most popular headcanon for Fluttershy is that she's Dutch, and this could be seen in Dutch culture. In traditional Dutch folklore, nature is rarely a passive backdrop. Instead, it is personified as an active, often volatile force that demands strict respect, cooperation, and caution, stemming from ancient Germanic pagan roots and shaped by centuries of living below sea level. Of course, we see this very shaped well in Fluttershy. She protects animals, preserves nature, and an odd note to a Reddit thread where they believe that because Dutch people lived below sea level, that's why Fluttershy in initial seasons would only rarely even flutter, even though it's in her name, compared to Dashing Rainbow Dash. She kind of stays more on the ground with nature, with the water, if you will. This could add to her headcanon in some way. Rarity. So Rarity falls under three main categories, one being some sort of East Asian descent, another being English descent, and another being French. I'm only going to touch on the East Asian and the French because sometimes canonically people put those two together saying she's mixed race, being half East Asian and half French. So yeah, essentially people only think she's English because of the accent, and I don't think that's enough good proof. So that's why. Belief 1. Rarity is East Asian, specifically South Korean. In East Asian, specifically South Korean folklore and traditional belief, clothing and work are never just functional or decorative. They are deeply tied to the spiritual harmony of the universe, ancestral respect, and personal fate. Rooted in a blend of Neo-Confucianism, shamanism, Taoism, traditional beliefs dictate that the way you dress and the attitude you bring to labor can directly alter your spiritual luck. Obviously, these are really prominent features in Rarity. She is highly fashionable and, similar to Twilight Sparkle, has a high work ethic, making the theory of her being East Asian, specifically South Korean, believable. Belief 2. Rarity is French. Going to get into the folklore and historical side of it because I love history, but off the bat you can just basically tell from all the designer brands being usually French and expensive, rarity perfectly fits that narrative. So, in French provinces, from Brittany to Alsace, clothing was heavily tied to superstition, protection from the supernatural, and the preservation of personal honor. Furthermore, French culture is heavy on agriculture, but in general, a go-getting mindset about achieving things such as work. And whilst many fans of the show might not look that heavily and historically into it like I am because I major in history, however, it's still good to see and recognize where some of these beliefs could come from, historically. Applejack. So, the most popular theory for Applejack's headcanon is, of course, being Texan or American. Most headcanons of the characters come from how they look in the show in some way, and also their accents, such as Rarity having an English accent. It's not as central as Applejack. People really believe she's Texan because of how she looks and how she acts and talks. Therefore, for the MLP fandom headcanons of Applejack, they're exactly how she acts in the show, and they represent her really well. The early American countryside work ethic was shaped by the realities of frontier life, farming, and religious beliefs. It emphasized that hard work was both a practical necessity and a moral duty. Moreover, to establish a lineage, those in the countryside had many children, which is directly seen in Applejack's large family, and in terms of work ethic, she's known for that. Therefore, this headcanon makes total sense. Rainbow Dash. So, for Rainbow Dash, the most popular headcanon is that she is of Latin descent. So, again, it's not a specific type of Latina that they believe Rainbow Dash is, but where Brazilians and Argentinians are concerned for the World Cup, for example, they're really good at soccer and sports, which could be one reason why people think she's supposed to be Latin. So, there are two routes we can look at. We can look at Greek mythology, which is highly hinted in Latin culture, and also Mayan civilization. So, for the ancient Mayans, sport was not a casual pastime or form of entertainment. It was a sacred, cosmic ritual necessary for the survival of the universe. And for the ancient Greeks, where a lot of Latin culture is inspired by, sports was a sacred civic duty and a direct expression of religious devotion, rather than a mere hobby. They believed that developing a flawless athletic body honored the gods, who they envisioned as physically perfect beings. Now, this excellently links to Rainbow Dash, who sees the Wonderbolts as deities of some sort, who she aims to impress with her athleticism, similar to Greek and Mayan religious beliefs. And, of course, this is a way to show how you're really, really strong, and maybe to impress these deities or people around you, which, obviously, Rainbow Dash excellently highlights a lot of confidence. Now, in conclusion, I know many people probably don't go into this historical iceberg when making these headcanons. However, it was kind of fun to see if I could defend their beliefs on why they think each character is that specific ethnicity or race or possesses that culture. So, this is Ivix signing off. In conclusion, let me know what you think about these headcanons with historical evidence. Me personally, these are the headcanons that I associate the characters with if they were to really exist. Don't get offended, by the way, guys. These are obviously just fan-made. And also, please beware that these are obviously going to be stereotypes with some historical backups. Ivix signing off. Bye!